Welcome to this small group training video series that we're doing. Whether you are an experienced and seasoned leader or a brand new leader, these videos are going to help you just to get back to the basics of what it means to be a small group leader, what authentic community and biblical community really looks like, what it means to be successful as a small group leader in Faith Church, some of the details to think about when forming your small group, and then lastly, what distinctives there are of our small group model here at Faith Church. And we're going to be putting more videos out as the time comes. But this first one is the question, what is a small group leader? Take a second right now and think about this question. When you hear the word leader, what comes to mind? Maybe you need to pause the video and think about this for just a second. What comes to mind when you hear the word leader? Maybe you think of a CEO of a large company or the President of the United States. You know, we all have preconceived ideas of what a leader should look like, what he should talk like, what she should, act like. And they have to be tall, confident, extroverted, people person. But what I want you to know is that there is no set template for being a leader. God can use anyone. I mean, think of some of the leaders that we read about in Scripture. Adam was the first human being, and he couldn't even lead his own family. His firstborn ended up killing his own brother. Eve, the first woman, became greedy and took the first bite literally into sin. Noah, the last righteous man on earth at the time, got drunk and slept in the nude in view of his kids. Abraham, the forefather of our faith, let other men walk off with his own wife on 2 different occasions. Sarah, the wife of Abraham, let her husband sleep with another woman and then hated the woman for it. I could go on and on. David, the friend of God, concealed his adultery with a murder. Peter, the man Jesus named the Rock, denied Christ 3 times. And Paul, the author of most of the New Testament, was a Pharisee who persecuted Christians before becoming one and was hampered by a thorn in the flesh for his whole life. The Bible shows us men and women who had issues just like us. Yet God still used them to build a movement that has not slowed down in more than 2,000 years. And even with the death of the only perfect leader, Jesus. Michael Kelly says that leadership is the joyful acceptance of responsibility at a given moment. Leadership's supposed to be joyful. It won't always be easy and it won't always be fun. But it is a joy when you think of the influence that you can have in changing people's lives, people's families, and trajectories. Now, before we talk about what leadership is, let's start by talking about what a leader isn't. A leader is not someone who has all the answers. A leader who has all the answers is not a leader anyone should follow. First of all, it's impossible. None of us have all the answers, but most of all, we want to follow somebody humble enough to admit that they don't know it all. And a leader is not someone who can teach the Bible weekly. There are some with the gift of teaching, but I'll tell you, a small group experience is not about one person teaching and the rest learning in this classroom setting. It's a shared discussion where we are all growing together. A small group leader is a facilitator of a conversation with the Bible as the guide, because ultimately people learn best by coming to the truth on their own. So leaders should focus less on telling answers and more on asking good questions. The next thing, the leader is not somebody who's everyone's best friend. Your job as a small group leader is not to make deep relationships with every single person in your small group. Not only is that unwise, but it's unhealthy. Our goal should be to find 2 to 3 people in our group who have the same gender as us. And if you're a male, 2 to 3 men. If you're a woman, 2 to 3 women, that you can disciple outside of group time and help other people in the group do the same. It's not your job to be friends with every single person in the group and to go deep with every single person. We saw Jesus do this with Peter, James, and John. He had the 3. And the goal is for you to do the same with 2 to 3 people in your small group. So, good news. The pressure's off. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be a Bible guru. You don't have to make space in your social life for 12 new best friends. You just have to be available, and God will do the rest. Yes, put in the work to train yourself as a leader, but I love this quote from Chris Surratt in the book. It says, when your group members look at you, they are not putting their faith in you as the leader, but in the Spirit's power working through your weakness. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians, I came to you in weakness, in fear, and in much trembling. My speech and my preaching were not with persuasive words of wisdom, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not be based on human wisdom, but on God's power. 1 Corinthians 2, 3 through 5. That's our goal as leaders, that people's faith will be based not on our wisdom, but on God's power. So we talked about what a leader isn't. Now let's talk about what it means to be a small group leader. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 2 says, shepherd God's flock among you, not overseeing out of compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you. Peter says that we are to be shepherds of sheep. It doesn't say, teach God's flock. We're not to be teachers of students. We're to be shepherds. And as shepherds, there are 4 qualities to consider. Number 1, shepherds leave no one behind. Just as the good shepherd left the 99 to go after the one, it's your job to recognize the various stages that each person is at in their journey in your small group. A small group leader's role is to help people in their group take the next spiritual step to get them from where they are to where they need to be. And some in our groups, they will fall away and potentially never come back. Maybe they never even came the first week, right? And it's guaranteed to happen that you're going to have people who show up and then they don't come back. Don't be surprised. And while it's not your job to force anyone to come back if they've left, a phone call early on can help prevent someone from falling away completely. So shepherds, they leave no one behind as much as it depends on them. When you consider what study you pick, you don't want to leave anyone in the dust. You want to make sure you consider to leave no one behind. Number 2, shepherds lead with compassion. Jesus, the ultimate shepherd, the good shepherd, he set the example as a leader who always had compassion for his followers, even when it was most inconvenient. See, after Jesus had heard that John the Baptist had died, he needed that space and that time to grieve. But while he was trying to get away to go to this remote place, the crowd followed him the whole way. And rather than getting angry or frustrated as you and I would, it says that Jesus had compassion on the crowd because he saw that they were sheep without a shepherd. Now, there will be times where someone might stay late after your small group because they need to talk and you're exhausted. And boundaries are absolutely necessary. I'm not saying that every single time you need to just allow that to happen. But there will be times where you're exhausted and somebody stays late. And Jesus reminds us that shepherds lead with compassion. Number 3, shepherds lead from the front. Jesus said in John 10:4, when he, the good shepherd, has brought all his own outside, he goes ahead of them. The sheep follow him because they know his voice. So a leader that people will follow is a leader willing to go first. This may mean sharing a vulnerable story with the group to kind of set the pace and the tone of authenticity. The group will model the behavior that you as the leader display. If you want your group to be open your heart first. If you want the group to serve them first. Leading from the front does not mean dictating direction. It means setting the example for others to follow. Number 4, shepherds lead sacrificially. There will be times when leading your group will be a sacrifice. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. John 10:11. While your sacrifices will probably not involve laying your life down for someone, opening your home to a group of people weekly is a sacrifice. You have to keep the house clean, put up the pets, pull out all the extra chairs, make sure there's food. It's exhausting to host a small group. If you're preparing the discussion, questions, that's going to take time to come prepared. You will need occasional breaks so you don't burn out as a leader. But that sacrifice of time and effort will lead to a group that bonds through consistency. When our season of leadership ends, we want to know. We want to know that we shepherded God's flock well. And in order to do that, we need to look no further than the good shepherd, Jesus, and to follow his example of shepherding his flock. And though we will never be perfect, we want to leave no one behind, number 1. Number 2, we want to lead with compassion. 3, we want to lead from the front. And 4, lead sacrificially. I hope this helps you understand a bit more of what it means to be a small group leader at Faith Church.